Call the July 30th, 2024 Environmental Resources Committee meeting to order. We will start the meeting by the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. We will have a short moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next on the agenda is public comment. We have one couple that signed up for public comment, but that is pertaining to one of the cases. So we will wait until the public hearing for the comment. Item number 4, approval of the July 2nd and 16th, 2024 committee minutes. Motion by Randy DeBrew. Second by Supervisor Schoenhorn. Okay, now I'm going to open the public hearing. Oh, sorry. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, now I'm going to open the public hearing. First, I'd like to ask everybody to please mute your phone and all electronic devices, including the people in the public. The Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is now meeting in public hearing on the location plans, specifications, and purpose of the following projects. 5A1, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Randall Gorski, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Easton. 5A2, Denny and Linda Davis, Rural Residential and Rural Estate to General Agriculture, Town of Easton. 5A3, Riverside Land Surveying, Nathan Winchelton, PLS on behalf of OnQ Holsteins LLC, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Easton. 5A4, Michael and Sue Gossi, Conservancy and Recreation to Farmland Preservation, and Conservancy and Recreation to Farmland Preservation to Light, Industrial Light, is it? In Town of Hull. Now I'd like to introduce the committee members. We have myself, Supervisor Mike Ritter. To my left, we have Supervisor Drabeck. Next to him, Supervisor Kroll. Next to him, Supervisor Schoenborn. Supervisor DeBrew. Leave online, we have our citizen member, Marilyn Bend. We also have from staff, Nicole Delone, the interim office manager, Lori Miskippen, CPZ director, Shad Harvey, land resources manager, Garrett Poggle, land use specialist. The establishment of the ERC is required by law for purposes of administration of the county ordinances and land conservation programs. This committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. The committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinances or state laws, but must apply the laws as written. The purpose of this committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezone petitions, and provide direction on land conservation and planning programs. The ERC committee will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a rezone petition. A tape recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist in the preparation of written hearing minutes. The committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant and anyone wishing to testify will be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in the order of those: first, in favor; second, opposed; third, as interested. The committee may ask questions on the zoning staff, of the zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements and the overall length of the hearing. To promote orderly discussion, anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions related to the hearing should state your name, and present your testimony or question so it becomes part of the official record. We request you avoid repetition. Once the committee has all the necessary facts, the chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether the applicant has met the standards in the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during the deliberation. However, the committee may question staff for purposes of clarification. After a decision is made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many decisions made by the committee are a recommendation to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Contact staff for more information regarding this county board process. The committee will now hear the application of 5A1 Tim Vreeland on behalf of Randall Gorski, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Easton. I believe we'll start with the staff report. Garrett, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. All right, this is for Randall Gorski, the petition to rezone land. Staff report for July 30th, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland, located at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. The property owners are Randall Gorski, residing at 162392 Mercedes Road, Wausau, Wisconsin, 54403. Area proposed to be rezoned is located west of the intersection of Sandy River Road and Owl Ridge Road on the north side of Owl Ridge Road. Vreeland Gorski to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 Zoning Code plans from to RE Rural Estate as described as Lot 1 of CSM 13710-60-87 located in Government Lot 20, Section 19, Township 29 North, Range 9 East, Town of Easton. Areas to be rezoned from GA General Agriculture to Rural Estate are described as Lot 1 and Lot 2 of the preliminary CSM. Parent parcel number is listed. Town of Easton Town Board met on July 8th, 2024. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, July 30th, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On July 8th, 2024, the Town of Easton Town Board recommended approval of the Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, and access. The length of the property exceeds the 5-to-1 length to width ratio as stated in Marathon County Chapter 18 Land Division Ordinance. However, it is within the authority of the Environmental Resources Committee to waive this requirement. Staff believe that this land division meets the intent of the Land Division Ordinance by creating parcels in an organized manner and limiting the number of parcels. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning and the intent of the Land Division Ordinance for Marathon County. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable. We do have Dave Decker, the county surveyor, here as well if there are any questions pertaining to the Land Division Ordinance.
All right, does anybody have any questions for staff? Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if you could explain this 5-to-1 length ratio thing.
Yeah, so the 5-to-1 ratio.
I got to swear you in.
Sorry.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. So the 5-to-1 length to width ratio is in the ordinance to prevent long, really long, narrow lots from being created. In an instance like this, with the rural nature of the parcel and the fact that it's still over 200 feet wide, still quite wide for a parcel, we didn't feel that it was really the intent of the Land Division Ordinance to address something like that. I guess that's why we decided to recommend approval.
Thank you.
Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dave, I'm just curious how often this 5-to-1 ratio is being exceeding that ratio, if it's if it's been an issue in the past with other, I guess, zoning, but.
No, we rarely run into this. Typically, typically our land divisions are a little bit different than this, but because it's it's a 40 deep, essentially a 40 deep, and they're trying to split it into that 225-ish, 220-ish parcel, it just exceeds that 5-to-1 ratio. So it's rare.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we will move on to public comment. Is there anybody here or online that want to speak for petition 5A1? Calling again, anybody want to speak for petition 5A1? Seeing none, we will go on. Anybody wanting to speak against petition 5A1? Once again, anybody wanting to speak against 5A1? Seeing none, anybody wishing to speak as interested? Seeing none, I will declare this public hearing closed. Now the committee will deliberate. Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the rezone of Randall Gorski from general agriculture to rural estate based on the findings of fact by staff, conclusions of law, also the town's approval.
Do I have a second? Supervisor Kroll, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion moves. We will move on to 5A2. Denny and Linda Davis, rural residential and rural estate to general agriculture in the town of Easton. We will have our staff report.
All right, this is for Denny and Linda Davis, petition to rezone land, staff report July 30th, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Denny and Linda Davis at 233048 Eau Claire River Road, Ringo, Wisconsin 54471. Property owners are the same. Area proposed to be rezoned is located south of the intersection of Eau Claire River Road and County Road Z on the west side of the road. The petition of Denny and Linda Davis to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 Zoning Code to rezone lands from RR Rural Residential and RE Rural Estate to General Agriculture as described as Lot 1, Lot 2, and Lot 3 of Certified Survey Map Number 18916, Document Number 1833947, located in the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 23, Township 29 North, Range 9 East, Town of Easton. Parent parcel numbers is listed. Town of Easton Town Board met on July 8th, 2024. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, July 30th, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice that a zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On July 8th, 2024, the Town of Easton Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Okay, does anybody have questions for staff? No questions for staff. Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Does anybody want to speak for 5A2? Does anybody want to speak for 5A2? Okay, does anybody want to speak against 5A2? One more time, does anybody want to speak against 5A2? Does anybody want to speak interested in 5A2? Okay, I will now declare the public hearing on 5A2 closed and the committee will deliberate. Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion for approval for the Yedideni and Linda Davis to amend the General Code of Ordinance from RR Rural Residential to RE, or from RR and RE to General Agriculture as described as Lot 1, 2, and 3.
Do I have a second? Supervisor Drabek. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will move on to 5A3, Riverside Land Surveying, Nathan Winston, PLS, on behalf of OnQ Holsteins LLC, General Agriculture to Rural Estate in the town of Easton.
All right, this is for OnQ Holsteins LLC, petition to rezone land. Staff report July 30th, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. Petitioner is Riverside Land Surveying, PLS, Nathan Winston, located at 2310 Willow Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. Property owner is OnQ Holsteins LLC at 232259 County Road Q, Ringgold, Wisconsin, 54471. Area proposed to be rezoned is located in the southeast corner of County Road Q and County Road Z. The petition of Riverside Land Surveying, Nathan Winston, PLS, on behalf of OnQ Holsteins LLC to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 Zoning Code to rezone lands from GA General Agriculture to RE Rural Estate, described as a part of Lot 4 of Certified Survey Map number 15498, recorded in Volume 70 of Certified Survey Maps, page 80, as document number 1544359, located in part of the northwest quarter of Section 21, Township 29 North, Range 9 East, the town of Easton. Area proposed to be rezoned from GA General Agriculture to RE Rural Estate as described as Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM. Parent parcel number is listed. Town of Easton Town Board met on July 8th, 2024. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, July 30th, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On July 8th, 2024, the Town of Easton Town Board recommended approval of Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Does anybody have any questions for staff? No questions for staff. Okay, so now we'll move on to public comment. Does anybody want to speak for 5A3? Anybody want to speak for 5A3? Does anybody want to speak against 5A3? One more time, does anybody want to speak against 5A3? Does anybody want to speak as interested for 5A3? Seeing none, I will declare the public hearing closed and the committee will deliberate. What are your wishes? Supervisor Schoenborg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What is the purpose of this parcel of land, may I ask? I'm curious. Is it for building or is it, I guess I'm just kind of not completely understanding this parcel.
Yeah, from what I've been told, the applicant is splitting it out in order for his son to build a house on it.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion? Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move to approve the petition of the Riverside Land Surveying on behalf of OnQ Hostings to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17, from general agriculture to rural or estate, as described as part of Lot 4 of the survey map.
Do I have a second? Supervisor Schoenborn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will now move on to 5A4, Michael and Sue Gossi, Conservancy Recreation to Farmland Preservation, and Conservancy and Recreation to Farmland Preservation to Light Industrial in the town of Hull.
All right, this is from Michael and Sue Goss, petition to rezone land. Staff report July 30th, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Michael and Sue Goss at, looks like I got the address wrong here. I have 22749 Chestnut Hill Lane, Abbotsford, Wisconsin, 54405. The petitioner is also the property owner. Area proposed to be rezoned is located on the corner of State Highway 29 and Chestnut Hill Lane, extending south on Chestnut Hill Lane. The petition of Michael and Sue Goss to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from CVRC Conservancy and Recreation to FP Farmland Preservation and CVRC Conservancy and Recreation and FP Farmland Preservation to Light Industrial, described as part of Lot 1 and Outlot 1 of CSM 7355-28-128 and part of the west half of the fractional northwest quarter of Section 3, Township 28 North, Range 2 East, Town of Hull. Area to be rezoned to LI Light Industrial is described as Lot 1, and area to be rezoned to FP Farmland Preservation is described as Lot 2 of the preliminary CSM, parent parcel numbers as listed. The Town of Hull Town Board met on July 17th, 2024. Marathon County Environmental Resource Committee is meeting today, July 30th, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On July 17th, 2024, the Town of Hull Town Board recommended approval of the Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resource Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for staff? Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to have a few questions here, Mr. Chair, so just kind of follow along, and I'll let you know when I'm finished with these. So, the first question I have is, it seems this is going to affect, or it's going to affect a territory that's located right on the state highway. Is there any considerations that need to be taken into account when thinking about a state highway?
One of the things that towns will look at is their comprehensive plan, what they see along that State Highway 29 corridor. We all, just so I know, we also have the applicant here as well. But the area along State Highway 29, the majority of it is currently zoned light industrial already. It looks like, and when it comes to that portion, we're clearing up some lot lines and things like that.
And just to confirm, so it seems we are switching from, I guess, like a conservation zoning to light industrial. How does this impact the wetlands that are located on the property from the survey map?
It wouldn't affect the use of the wetlands. The wetlands themselves are technically their own separate zoning district. So the uses are already laid out in Chapter 22, our shoreline, wetland, and floodplain code. So those allowable uses don't change under that light industrial zoning district. The DNR is also involved with any of those approvals as well. So we have our uses inside that district, then any permitting inside of that, as far as what they're able to do for disturbance, is done through the DNR.
Oh, great, thank you. So to follow up on that, just to kind of that, I guess the whole train of thought, I'm curious how if this is switching to either a light industrial or a farmland preservation, if this will have any impact on our, if it is like a farming situation, would there be any impact with the Big O Plain, like watershed?
As far as the actual farmability of the property, I don't believe the property is currently being farmed. It was originally zoned, this large portion, as a conservancy because the applicants were planning to use it as a campground, but then their personal plans for the property changed. So they're planning to hopefully build a home on Lot 2. So by getting it out of that conservancy and into a farmland preservation, that's consistent with what the majority of the town of Hall is, because they have a large portion of their town that's zoned farmland preservation. And then it would allow them to build their home on that property.
Okay, so, and then just one follow-up question. So on section 4 of the staff report, it says that the rezoning will not cause unreasonable air or water pollution or soil erosion. Is there a report that can be given to your county supervisors just in cases when they are affecting conservancy areas like this? Is that something we can ask for, or how are you coming to that conclusion based on this?
Okay. Yeah, so just speaking with the zoning administrator, nothing has been proposed on that farmland preservation or that light industrial that changes its current use. I believe, and again, we can confirm with the applicant that's here, I believe it is a trucking company that is taking place and working on that light industrial area as well. So that's not, that use, it would not be changing. And then, like I said, the farmland preservation is to come from the conservancy area into the farmland preservation, be more consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. But yes, in the future, if they did propose something where there would be a air, water, potential pollution area, obviously we would get the details on that and present that to the committee.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we will go into public comment. Anybody wishing to speak for 5A4? Just be around for questions if, okay. Okay, once again, anybody wishing to speak for 5A4? Anybody wishing to speak against 5A4? One more time, anybody wishing to speak against 5A4? Anybody wishing to speak as interested in 5A4? Seeing none, I will declare this public hearing closed and the committee will deliberate. Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezone of Michael and Sue Goss from conservancy and recreation to farmland preservation, and conservancy and recreation and farmland preservation to light industrial, based on the findings of fact by staff, conclusions of law, and the town's approval.
Okay, do I have a second? Supervisor DeBrew, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now, we will move on to 5B, review and possible recommendations of the county board for its consideration, town zoning changes pursuant to 60.2 sub 3, and there is none. 5B, or 5C1, petition of Tyler C. Hafer, text amendment changes to Chapter 17. And with that, I will turn this over to Corp Counsel to give us some clarification on where we're at with this.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as you'll recall from last week, this is the text amendment petition by Tyler C. Hafer that was returned to this committee for action. So pursuant to statute 5969 sub 5, in the event that the committee recommends denial to the county board, and the county board does not approve that denial, but instead returns it back to the committee, the committee is charged with forwarding to the county board an ordinance consistent with the petition that was presented by the petitioner, in this case, Mr. Seehafer. So the way I read the statute is there's not really any discretion there. The committee is directed by the county board to forward that ordinance up to the county board for consideration. So any amendments to the petition or text of the petition would only be in order at county board. They could not be made here at the committee level. I do have a draft ordinance that I can read to you because I don't have it in your packet. And it's pretty simple. It mirrors our other text amendment ordinances, but it starts, whereas the Marathon County Board of Supervisors has been petitioned to amend the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County, Chapter 17, the Marathon County Zoning Code, through a petition of Tyler Seehafer for certain text amendment changes to Chapter 17 regarding farm consolidations. And whereas the text amendments may be viewed online at marathoncounty.gov/services/zoning and are also attached here too, and attached to the ordinance itself will be the petition that Mr. Seehafer filed with the exact text. I think that's actually up. Yeah, that's up right in front of you. So that would be attached to the ordinance with their exact language. And whereas the petition to amend the zoning code was referred to the Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee for public hearing, and whereas the Environmental Resources Committee on due notice conducted a public hearing thereon to consider the proposed text amendments, and again, that occurred back in June. If you'll recall, that was the date of the actual public hearing. And whereas the Marathon County Board on July 23rd, 2024 voted to direct the Environmental Resources Committee to forward to the County Board an ordinance drafted to effectuate the petition. And whereas on July 30th, 2024, so today, the Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee forwarded this ordinance and the attached text amendment draft, again, what's on your screen would be the attachment, to the Marathon County Board for its consideration. Now therefore be it resolved that the Marathon County Board of Supervisors does ordain to amend Chapter 17 of the Marathon County General Code of Ordinances pursuant to the attached document. The only other piece, and this would be the one area for some committee discussion. So anytime our farmland preservation ordinances are being amended, the state actually has to weigh in after we adopt or before we adopt an amendment, indicating whether or not the state certifies that it complies with state statute. We've submitted the language to the state, to DATCAP, they're the overseeing agency. The one piece that causes me a little legal heartburn is if we had adopted, incorporated this amendment into our ordinances and the state then came and said, your farmland preservation ordinance is now not in compliance with 9138, our farmland preservation ordinances would then be uncertified and there would be issues with property owners claiming that tax credit. So my thought is perhaps what we could include in the ordinance itself is something that indicates this text amendment shall be incorporated into the Marathon County General Code of Ordinances upon certification from the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection that the text amendment meets and maintains the requirements for certification of Marathon County's Farmland Preservation Ordinance under Wisconsin Statute Sections 9136 and 9138. That would offer us a little bit of protection. I think we're hoping that the state will give us some information before county board considers this, just so we know at that point. But right now, we don't have any indication from the state on the certification piece, but I don't think that really matters at this point. I think the committee is directed by the county board to forward an ordinance that adopts the petition language, and my only thought for discussion would be whether you want to include that additional clause about DATCAP's approval or not. I think it would be worth considering.
Thank you. I would definitely be in favor of adding that just to protect our farmland preservation from DATCAP. Should we do something that they don't approve of, that could shut down everything we're doing here. So I think we should be able to forward that with that addition that it won't be adopted until we hear back. Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions for Corp Counsel. One, the first is that you stated in 91.38, you could see this perhaps failing at a state statute. What in this specific code do you think would like you make that not pass?
I don't particularly see anything that I'm concerned about. I just, until I see it in writing from the state, I don't know for sure what they're going to say. I've never been involved in the legal analysis from the states and on our farmland pres ordinance before, so I don't know exactly what they're looking for. Nothing jumps out to me in 9138 that seems like it would trigger that type of denial, but I don't know for sure. And Shad might have more information on that.
I can add to that. I think the biggest thing with DATCAP's review, it hasn't really happened, or they haven't really seen this that often, but it would be the relocation aspect of the ordinance. That's what they're going to be digging into a little bit further to see if that complies with Chapter 91. The remainder of the ordinance, other than the relocation portion, is fairly consistent with what we have already in our code. So that would be the one factor that that DATCAP will be looking into the most to see if it complies with 91.
Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you. So I also had a follow-up. So it seems like in this, I guess, our committee today, we cannot make any amendments based on what the county board had recommended. So what is the purpose, if we can't make amendments, to bring it back to our committee?
That's a great question. I would direct that question to the state legislature if I could, but they're not here. If you read the statute, it's actually written in a way that this back and forth between the board and the committee is actually, if you read the statute, intended to be between a county board and the zoning administrator of the county. But in many counties, including this one, we've designated this committee as that zoning entity for the purposes of statutory review. So instead of a back and forth between the county board and an individual, where the county board says, hey, staff person, draft this and send it back to us, we're operating where the staff person is actually your committee. So it doesn't, like some other statutes, make 100% sense, but I have to read it that way, and I don't think there's any leeway in the statute to say we can amend it again after the county board has already directed that it come back to the board without any changes. It's a weird creature of statute is the short way to say it.
Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to ask the question. Now, when we do a normal rezone and we haven't heard from the town, you tell us that we shouldn't, depending on the town's opinion, we could pass it, but then the town, we will wait for their opinion and then not do it or not. You don't let us do that. You do tell us we shouldn't do that. At least I remember you saying that. So I'm wondering why we can do it here on this.
So the towns are allowed to give input, but reading the statute, they're not required to do that in this process. So as part of that public hearing, notice was given to the towns. The ones that wanted to weigh in did. So when I read the statute, I don't see a requirement that we have to wait for any additional input. I don't know if Shad has anything more to add on that, but please.
Yeah, I was just going to say this is kind of a separate process from the rezones. The rezones lay out kind of what we're supposed to do as far as notifications and the input we're supposed to take. When it comes to text amendments, we do reach out for town input. In this particular instance, that town input has already been kind of brought in, and then it went to county board, and now it's being directed back to basically send the petition up again. So we're kind of past that particular point. as far as farm consolidations in general, a farm consolidation in our code as it's written now, so not including this particular petition, but what's in our code right now, farm consolidations kind of bypass the rezone aspect of it. So there's no requirement for, if somebody's going for a farm consolidation, there's no reason in our code or nothing laid out in our code saying that they have to get town approval for that consolidation. So and that would be consistent with this text amendment as well, where if this were to pass and the individual met the farm consolidation standards, they would be able to split that property off without town input as well.
Just curious, why are we, if we didn't do it the other town, why are we listening to the other towns? You had said something to the effect that the town's idea, it doesn't really matter. Am I hearing that right? What the town's opinion is doesn't really matter. It's if they combine the property or not.
As far as a consolidation goes, the town doesn't really have a say, because it's in our code as a different process. So the town really doesn't have a say in the consolidation process of it. It's one of those things that it's in our code that allows a property owner to split it off if they meet the definition of a farm consolidation. It's just a different process that's laid out.
Thank you. So why do we, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Why are we getting the opinion from other towns then? Just
Oh,
question.
gotcha. Yeah, the reason we'd be getting opinions from other towns right now is because this is a text amendment. So because it's a text amendment, we do still ask other towns to weigh in and bring their comments so they can, whether say they're for or against it, so you guys can make a determination based on town input. But in general, if this process is already in our code, such as a farm consolidation process, that is something that doesn't need town input, but amending the code, you need, we get town input for. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Kind of, yeah.
Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if this is the time and space to have questions specifically regarding the language of the ordinance, or is this something that would need to be deliberated at the county board?
I would, well, ultimately it's the chair's determination of what's germane, but I would strongly suggest that that's a discussion for the full board. I think we're at a place where we are directed to forward that ordinance back to the full board, and the full board ultimately has the decision as to whether to make any changes to that language.
I would agree with that. Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So are we voting on this then, or is it just automatically going back to the board? I'm just, because I'm not going to vote for it, so I'm just,
Yeah, we do have to take a vote.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Any other questions? Would anybody like to make a motion? Supervisor Schoenborn has a question.
I guess I'm a little concerned. What is our time frame on this amendment that we have to, this is going to Corp Council, what our time frame is to get this all down the road? I mean, are we waiting for a decision here, or are we tentatively just going to move it along?
There isn't a statutory time frame in play here. It's, I don't think that, for instance, if there was a motion to postpone this, I don't know that that's in order at this time either, because we have direction from the county board. Again, this is a weird creature of statute. It's my interpretation of it. There isn't a specific time frame that I'm aware of. It's just, what more information are you looking for? What more information do you need in those decisions?
Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you. So if this would fail, what happens?
Well, I would anticipate a lawsuit would be filed to force us to send it on to the county board because of what the statute says.
So regardless, we were directed to present an ordinance to the county board regardless, so we got to send them something. Supervisor Dickinson, I'll recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple questions. Do we normally submit language on resolutions to DATCAP? You know, when these come through, do we normally kind of submit them as you had mentioned? That's one question. And the second question is, did Seehafers agree to all the language that was included here? I know this is from April, but were they consulted before this meeting? And then I do have one other question after those two. Thank you.
I can start and then Shad can finish. We submit any farmland preservation text amendments to DATCAP because statutorily we're required to. Our ordinances can't take effect and any amendments can't take effect until DATCAP certifies them. That's in the farmland preservation area only, so that's why we're submitting it and required to do that. Regarding the language, so the text amendment itself is the exact language that the Seehafers proposed in their petition. The ordinance itself, I just wrote a few hours ago. So no, they weren't consulted about the text of the ordinance, but the petition and the actual language that would be going into our ordinances. So the changes that would be made to Chapter 17 is the language coming from the Seehafers.
Go ahead.
I just have one more. Thank you. So given this immense confusion of authority, statute, committee, is there a way to have a different process for such text amendments outside of a town? I mean, because in this situation, you have citizens who are suggesting an amendment to the ordinance, even though it applies to them. I don't know if we need to be considering a different route for that, a rules review, change to ordinance or something, if that's legitimate, because clearly we're in this like tennis match going back and forth, and it's not efficient. So I offer that up as whoever wants to comment on that. Thank you.
I can start and Chad can finish. I think that's a good discussion to have, particularly perhaps in rules review. Right now, we're doing it the way that we have to do it to be consistent with state statute and our ordinances. Whether or not we can make some changes to our ordinances to make this not as clunky, clunky is the word I'll use, I think that's worth exploring.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, as everybody's aware, we haven't gotten too many petitions from private individuals, so this follows the same process, whether or not the county was petitioning it or a town was petitioning it. Same thing with if an individual is petitioning it, it still goes through that same process of, because it's an ordinance change, it affects townships that are under county zoning, so it's something we have to reach out to them to try and get their input as well. So it follows the same process, I guess, as any other one. But if I don't know if there's an opportunity to kind of make it less clunky, like you'd referred to. But as of right now, it has to follow that same process.
Any other questions? Supervisor DeBrew.
So what are we actually voting on? We can't vote it down, we can't change it, right? So what choices do we have? Why vote?
So you are voting to forward the ordinance to the county board for consideration. If you're comfortable with the language as I read it, you could make the motion to forward that to the county board for consideration. You don't have to say that you're approving the language, but you're forwarding it to the county board for consideration. That would be my suggestion at this point.
So am I correct in saying that If you don't agree with the language, it would be at the full county board is when you would voice that?
That would be what how I would read the statute, yes.
Okay. Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion to forward the requested ordinance with the language that it be approved by DATCAP first, according to Corp Council. Let's go from there.
Do I have a second? Supervisor Schoenborn seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Okay, on to item 6, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports, and committee discussion. 6A1, department updates, conservation planning and zoning, parks, recreation, and forestry, conservation planning and zoning. 6A1, workday review of second quarter department budget versus actuals.
Where are my other departments? I'll let the administrator, I guess, kick us off.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your packet, there are several pages of financials. This is, again, consistent with the desire from, it started at HR Finance and Property, but also the individual standing committees to begin to utilize our financial system to bring this information to you. We're still working through a number of things, but I will say your committee's financial reports, there's nothing overly surprising to us other than, again, the observation that there are some mapping issues we need to clean up. But, the thing that I'm always looking at when I try to look at these financials, particularly through the year, I keep in mind that not all of our departments, in fact, very few of our departments have a budget where you can count on the idea that essentially as we move each month through the year, we want to be 1/12 further through the budget. That's just not the way many of our revenues and expenses hit. The one general exception to that is personnel, salaries, and wages. And again, a complicating factor here that we're going to work through with our new finance director is we have a number of departments that have, as does conservation planning and zoning, a general fund operating component as well as a grants fund operating component. But if you have specific questions about any department budgets, we can certainly try to answer those or bring answers back. But when I look at the conservation planning and zoning general budget, I see personnel, wages, salaries and wages, you're about 45% through your budget. That's a good number when we consider we have a bit of a payroll lag. So there's at least one more payroll cycle that would hit if you were 6 months through the year. And when you meld kind of the general fund and the grants fund together, I think you're right about that, between 45 and 50% for conservation planning and zoning. But happy to talk through, as Lori can do, with respect to some of the other areas in the budget as we clean them up. But largely from my perspective, nothing overly surprising or concerning. When we get to some other departments, if you also have the pleasure to serve on Health and Human Services, for example, their grants budget is substantially larger. It's a much larger component of their budget. There are more things we need to clean up relative to the grants administration. The simple explanation is that our old system, we managed grants within a single budget within the department. It was essentially a revenue within the operating budget for each individual department. Workday does it differently. It has a very robust grant module, and we're trying to figure that out as we go through. And in fact, we learned a lot through the audit this last month and a half or 2 months. So overall, those are the financials you'll see as you look through Parks, Rec, and Forestry. Similarly, they have a grant fund. Solid Waste largely operates as an enterprise fund. And I know Lori is the solo department here appearing in person, but I don't know if anyone else is online. If you do have specific questions about departmental financials, we'll certainly bring information back.
Jamie's online.
Jamie's on, perfect. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, Lori or Jamie, relative to the specific financials, but otherwise we're happy to take any questions.
I think I would just echo what Administrator Leonard said about the mapping is something that we're still working out between our teller cash receipting and where it's reporting in Workday. So I feel like these reports are helping us through that process a lot, because I know when I looked at the actuals, I was like, okay, some of these things aren't mapping to the right place. So that's work we have to go in and clean up to figure out why that's not, because I know, for example, the line item related to $135,000 in regulatory permits and fees is related to that's our non-metallic mining line item, and it shows that we haven't received any payments yet for that, and I know that's not the case. They're actually mapped in other categories here, so something we just have to figure out between our systems to get that right. It's not unusual for us to still be at 26% for our revenues at this time of year. A lot of our grant monies that come as part of our revenues do not come until the third and fourth quarter. So,
Yeah, and I'll give another example of that. Lori just talked about a revenue cycle not being kind of equally spread out through the year that you might otherwise expect in a business. Similarly, expenses don't always hit that way. I'll give you one example from my department budget. Within my department budget is the line item where the county board, through your budget process, historically has approved allocating funds for a number of performance contracts with some local nonprofits. For example, United Way 211, the Historical Society, the Women's Community, and McDevco. So I have that line item, little in excess of $200,000 for those contracts. Those expenses hit right away in January of each year, so we're cutting those checks. So that line item for me is essentially 80+%. It was 80+% expended in the first quarter. That's not surprising. The line items are set up for specific purposes, like Lori alluded to, but just something also important to keep in mind.
Supervisor DeBrew with a question?
Yeah, under contractual services, how come professional services are running so high on most of them? Is that some obvious reason, or?
I know for mine, one thing that's happening there, we did dig into that last week, and for whatever reason, we have an MPO match, the Metropolitan Planning Organization match, and for some reason it is mapping to that category, and I'm not completely sure why, because I don't feel like that's how we built it in the budget, so we're trying to figure out. That's what I believe is leading to mine.
And one thing I think is important, that's a good example, is, sometimes it's helpful to look at the kind of the higher level, the high level portion of the budget. So if you roll up from professional services into contractual services, for example, within the CPZ general fund budget line, because you will see, as you alluded to, the professional services actually appears to be over the original anticipated budget, but not when you roll up to a higher level. So we have to clear up the mapping to make sure we're mapping things the right way. We haven't turned on a function where it doesn't allow you to expend above your budget for the lower level items. For example, like we have office supplies and special services. Do I care if you've spent more out of office supplies than your budget? Not really, if within that broader category we're still on track. And if you look at CPZ, for example, they're only 58% of the way through the overall higher level. But my expectation is, as we move forward, we'll budget better with the new system, and we'll get more accurate with those things on the more granular level. But the important thing for me really is, hey, as we move up that hierarchy, are we still within those higher level budget lines, at least for now? I certainly want to clean it up moving forward, but that's the general explanation. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Jamie, did you want to add anything on the parks?
I don't have a lot to add other than to echo the same thing that Lori and Lance have said. On my side, there isn't a lot of cleanup. We've done a lot of cleanup already, especially when we bill the city every month. What I need to grasp with the new system is how it recognizes the city revenue when the city pays its bill each month to us, and then how it's recognized those expenditures that haven't yet been paid back by the city. So I need to work with finance on getting a more accurate report when it comes to the city billing. As far as the grants go, because we have different grants and how we coordinate with them and then their fiscal years, we each month have some corrections that are made from when we budget a certain bill and then we have to reallocate it to one area or the other. So it is mapping. It's the same thing that Lance and Lori have said that we're working on, and the grants are just all getting cleaned up from how they were from last year. We just, as through the audit, learned a lot of information about the grant setup. So that is now being cleaned up for 2024, and we'll be able to move forward with a more, hopefully, a more easier and clearer direction on grants.
Okay, any questions from anybody else? All right. We will move on to item 7, policy issues, discussion, and potential committee determination. We have none. Item 8, next committee meeting is September 3rd, 2024, 3 p.m. in the Assembly Room, and future agenda items. Committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. Item 8B, announcements, requests, correspondence. Item 8B1, upcoming outreach and comprehensive plan amendment related to recently adopted farmland preservation plan update.
Yeah, just a quick announcement that we've talked a couple times, I believe, at County Board here at ERC and at the exec, that we're going to be proposing that amendment to the comprehensive plan that's required by the state to fully incorporate our adopted farmland preservation plan. I pulled up the list. I think that I circulated this to County Board in May. So we do have a draft ready to go that we're going to notify everyone is available to start looking at. We'll be notifying the towns and surrounding counties as required by statute, with the goal of holding a public hearing at the October 1st ERC meeting is when we would target to officially have a hearing on that amendment, and then it would go to County Board for consideration of adoption. So look in your emails to see where that link is. It's a very large document once it's in the comp plan and once the appendix and everything are there. So we'll be sending a link to where you can download it and take a look at it, and then we'll put it on the ERC agenda for next month as well to discuss those edits. But it is limited to the list that we have shown to you before of what we need to do to comply with the state to bring it into our comp plan. So.
All right, item 9, do I have a motion to adjourn? I think Supervisor Kroll was first, by a hair. Second, Supervisor Drabeck. All opposed, or all in favor? Aye. All opposed, we are adjourned.
This meeting is no longer being recorded.
Nice job, Mr. Chair.